Buried Leads by Jon Cronshaw. Olivia Brooks pinched the bridge of her nose between thumb and forefinger as her iPhone vibrated with yet another notification. She'd been staring at the same paragraph in Zadie Smith's new novel for 20 minutes, unable to focus on anything but the incessant digital hum of neediness. "Fuck's sake," she muttered, giving in and swiping open her inbox. Same person. Clara Bennett. 4th email this week, each one increasingly desperate. The subject line read, "Please, just one chance. I'm begging you." Olivia's finger hovered over the delete button. Her channel, Brooks No Bullshit, had grown from a hobby 3 years ago to 2.4 million subscribers across platforms. The literary world had fragmented into 1,000 digital pieces, and somehow she'd become one of the gatekeepers picking through the shards. She'd built her reputation on authenticity, a rare commodity in a world where most reviewers were little more than promotional mouthpieces for publishing houses. Olivia Brooks told the truth about books, and people loved her for it, or hated her. She opened the email. "Dear Olivia, I know I'm becoming a nuisance, but I've poured 5 years of my life into this manuscript. Buried Leads is the best thing I've ever written, and I know in my heart it could find its audience with the right champion. Just 1 hour of your time. That's all I'm asking. I live in a quiet cottage near Oxford. I could make lunch. We could discuss literature. No pressure for a review if you don't connect with it. I've followed your channel since you reviewed only for your book club. Your authenticity is what the literary world needs. Please, Clara Bennett." Olivia dropped her phone onto the sofa cushion beside her, rubbing her eyes. One of her earliest videos had been titled, "Why I Don't Review Self-Published Work," where she'd explained the time constraints of running a literary channel solo. That video had 347,000 views and around 5,000 angry comments. Yet here she was, fielding pleas every day, each one slightly more desperate than the last. Every author convinced they were the exception. Olivia picked up her phone again and flicked to her calendar. There was a blank spot on Saturday. She'd planned to film her monthly book haul, but that could wait. Maybe this Clara person would finally leave her alone if she granted her an hour. "Fine," she typed. "Saturday, 1 p.m. Send the address. 90 minutes max. No promises." She hit send before she could reconsider, then tossed her phone across the room where it landed with a soft thud on a pile of advance reader copies. "You need to work on your boundaries," she told the empty apartment, echoing what her therapist had been telling her for months. Clara Bennett's cottage looked like it had been designed by an algorithm that had been fed too many British period dramas. Thatched roof, roses around the door, weathered stone walls. Olivia half expected Maggie Smith to emerge with a tray of scones and cutting remarks. She parked her Audi alongside the gravel path and checked her reflection in the rearview mirror. The sleek bob she'd had cut last week still looked sharp, the red lipstick a warning sign. Her therapist had suggested she dress less intimidatingly for these meetings. Olivia had deleted that therapist's number. Before she could knock, the cottage door swung open. Clara Bennett was bird-thin with anxious eyes magnified behind thick glasses. Her mouth twitched into a smile. "You came. I wasn't sure you would." "I said I would," Olivia said, already regretting the decision. "Of course, please come in." The cottage interior matched its exterior in calculated quaintness. Exposed beams, mismatched furniture that looked deliberately curated in its casualness. Books everywhere, stacked on tables, crammed into shelves, piled beside an ancient-looking armchair. "Tea?" Clara asked, hovering as Olivia took in the space. "That would be great." "I've got Earl Grey, English breakfast, herbal—" "Earl Grey is fine." Clara nodded and disappeared into what Olivia assumed was the kitchen, returning minutes later with a tray bearing a steaming teapot, 2 cups, and a plate of shortbread. "Homemade," Clara said, nodding at the biscuits. "My grandmother's recipe." Olivia selected a piece and took a polite bite. It was actually quite good. She accepted the cup of tea Clara offered and settled into the armchair, which was more comfortable than it looked. "So," Olivia said, after a sip of tea, "tell me about your book." Clara perched on the edge of the sofa. "It's a psychological thriller, about an author who becomes obsessed with a critic who gave her a negative review." Olivia raised an eyebrow. "Sounds personal." "It's fiction, though I suppose most fiction has elements of truth in it." "And why did you want me to read it, specifically?" Olivia took another sip of tea, ignoring the slight bitterness that lingered at the back of her throat. "Because you're honest. Your audience trusts you." Clara leaned forward. "And because you have the power to change a writer's life." "I review books I connect with. I can't promise anything." "Of course not. I wouldn't expect you to compromise your integrity." Olivia felt a strange heaviness in her limbs. The room seemed to blur at the edges. She placed her teacup down with a hand that felt disconnected from her body. "Are you all right?" Clara's voice sounded distant, underwater. "I think—" Olivia tried to stand, but her legs wouldn't cooperate. "What was in the tea?" Clara's face swam in and out of focus, her expression transforming from nervous to something else entirely, calculating, determined. "Just a mild sedative," she said, her voice clearer now, as if Olivia's hearing had adjusted to being underwater. "Nothing dangerous. I need you to understand my book, Olivia. Really understand it." The room tilted. Olivia felt herself sliding sideways in the armchair, unable to stop her descent into unconsciousness. "What are you—" Darkness swallowed her words. Olivia woke to the sensation of restraint. Her wrists were bound to the arms of a wooden chair with what felt like zip ties. Her ankles were similarly secured to the chair legs. A splitting headache pulsed behind her eyes, and her mouth felt like it had been stuffed with cotton. She was still in Clara's cottage, though this room was different. Papers covered the walls, notes, photographs, snippets of text. In the centre, a large corkboard displayed what looked like a timeline. And at the end of that timeline was a photograph of Olivia herself, speaking at a literary festival in Edinburgh 3 months ago. "You're awake!" Clara's voice came from behind her. Olivia tried to turn her head, but found even that simple movement sent waves of nausea through her body. "What the fuck have you done?" Clara moved into view, carrying a glass of water with a straw. She held it to Olivia's lips. "Drink. It's just water, I promise. The grogginess will pass." Olivia hesitated, then gave in to her thirst. The cool water helped clear some of the fog from her brain. "Why am I tied to a chair?" she asked, flexing her wrists against the plastic restraints. "Because I need you to listen," Clara said, pulling up another chair to sit directly in front of Olivia. "Really listen. No checking your phone, no looking at your watch, no thinking about your next video. Just you and my words. This is insane. You can't just drug people and tie them up because you want them to read your fucking manuscript." Clara smiled, a tight, humorless expression. "Can't I? Isn't that what you do to authors? Hold them captive, force them to listen to your judgment, decide their fate with a few carelessly chosen words on your channel. That's not the same thing, and you know it. Isn't it?" Clara reached for a thick manuscript that sat on a nearby table. "Do you know how much I've invested in this book, Olivia? Not just time and emotion. Money. Everything I had. I took out a second mortgage on this cottage to pay for editors, for cover designers, for marketing that went nowhere." "That's not my problem," Olivia said. It becomes your problem when you have the power to fix it, Clara replied, her voice hardening. One positive review from you would change everything for me. Everything. Olivia pulled against the zip ties again, wincing as they bit into her skin. So your plan is what? Force me to read your book at knife point, and then expect me to give it a glowing review? Not quite. Clara placed the manuscript on Olivia's lap. I want you to read it, yes. And then I want you to give it an honest review. If you truly don't like it, you can say so. Then why the restraints? Insurance. To make sure you actually read it before judging it. Olivia stared at the manuscript in her lap. Buried Leads, by Clara Bennett. The cover page was professionally designed, she had to admit. A minimalist image of a woman half buried in newspaper headlines. Fine, she said, seeing no immediate alternative. I'll read it, but I need one hand free to turn pages. Clara hesitated, then nodded. She produced a pair of scissors and cut the zip tie on Olivia's right wrist. Don't try anything stupid. This cottage is isolated. No one would hear you scream. That seemed melodramatic, but Olivia wasn't in a position to point it out. She flexed her freed hand, restoring circulation, then opened the manuscript to the first page. Chapter 1. The critic arrived at exactly 3 o'clock, her red Audi crunching on the gravel driveway. Margot watched from behind the curtain, heart hammering in her chest. Today was the day everything would change. Olivia looked up. What is this? Clara smiled. Just keep reading. The first chapter described in uncomfortable detail a scenario nearly identical to Olivia's arrival at the cottage. The protagonist, an author named Margot, had invited a famous literary critic to discuss her novel. By chapter 3, Margot had drugged the critic's tea and secured her to a chair. This isn't fiction, Olivia said, closing the manuscript. This is a fucking instruction manual for what you're doing right now. Life imitates art, Clara said with a shrug. Or perhaps art predicts life. Keep reading, please. Why should I? Because you'll want to know how it ends. Against her better judgment, Olivia continued reading. The prose was undeniably good, taut, precise, with an escalating sense of dread. Clara could write, which somehow made the situation even more disturbing. As she read deeper into the manuscript, Olivia found herself drawn into the perspective of Margot, the author turned kidnapper. Her desperation was palpable, her justifications almost reasonable when viewed through the warped lens of creative obsession. In chapter 6, the critic began to show signs of Stockholm Syndrome, becoming invested in Margot's novel, despite her circumstances. This is psychological bullshit, Olivia said, looking up from the page. Clara, who had been quietly observing, tilted her head. Is it? You haven't stopped reading for the past hour. Olivia's stomach lurched as she realised Clara was right. She'd been absorbed in the manuscript despite her situation, or perhaps because of it. The layers of meta-narrative were making her head spin. Or maybe that was still the drugs. I need to use the bathroom, she said, closing the manuscript. Clara hesitated, then nodded. All right, but don't try anything stupid. She produced a sharp paring knife from her pocket. I don't want to hurt you, Olivia. I just want you to understand. She cut the zip ties at Olivia's ankles, then gestured towards a door off the main room. Bathroom's through there. Door stays open. You're joking. I'm not. Olivia stood on shaky legs, her cramped muscles protesting after hours in the chair. She made her way to the bathroom, acutely aware of Clara watching her every move. The humiliation of using the toilet with the door open was just another layer to this bizarre nightmare. As she washed her hands, Olivia caught her reflection in the mirror. Her makeup had smudged, dark circles beneath her eyes. She looked like someone else, a character in someone else's story. Back in the main room, she noticed Clara's laptop open on the table, its screen showing Olivia's own YouTube channel. Her most recent video, a scathing review of a hyped literary novel, was paused at a moment where Olivia was particularly animated in her criticism. "You've been following me for a while," Olivia said, nodding towards the laptop. 3 years. Since your channel had just 20,000 subscribers. So this obsession isn't new. It's not obsession, Clara snapped. It's research. I needed to understand how reviewers think, how they work, what drives them to build themselves up by tearing others down. That's not what I do. No? Clara hit play on the video. Olivia's recorded voice filled the room. This book is what happens when an MFA program and a marketing department have a baby and then abandon it at a Brooklyn coffee shop. Olivia winced. It had been a particularly harsh review. That author took 3 years to write that book, 3 years of his life, and you dismissed it in 15 minutes of snark. I gave my honest opinion. That's what my audience expects. And what about what writers need? Clara's voice rose. What about the years of work, the rejection, the self-doubt? Do you ever think about the person behind the book you're tearing apart for entertainment? Olivia had no immediate answer. She'd had this argument before, of course, with publishers, with other authors, with herself on the darker nights when she questioned what she was contributing to the literary world. Sit down, Clara said, gesturing back to the chair. Keep reading. Olivia considered making a run for it, but Clara still held the knife, and the cottage door seemed miles away. She returned to the chair, picking up the manuscript where she'd left off. In Chapter 8, the fictional critic discovered that the kidnapping scenario had been meticulously planned. Margot had documented everything, research on the critic's habits, schedules, preferences, every detail calculated for maximum impact. Olivia looked up at the walls of the cottage, seeing the evidence of Clara's planning with new eyes. Photos of Olivia at events, screenshots of her videos, notes on her reviewing style, her preferences, even the brand of lipstick she wore. How long have you been planning this? Since I finished the first draft. About a year. A year. While Olivia had been going about her life, filming videos, attending book launches, dating that disastrous poet from Manchester, Clara had been watching, planning, preparing for this moment. What happens in your book? Olivia asked. Does the critic escape? Does Margot kill her? How does it end? Clara smiled. I wrote 2 endings. I haven't decided which one to use yet. That depends on me, I'm guessing. Smart girl. Clara took the manuscript from Olivia's lap. I think that's enough reading for now. You're getting the idea. So what happens next in your grand plan? You can't keep me here forever. No, just long enough. Tomorrow, you're going to film a special review of buried leads for your channel. A glowing review, naturally. One that emphasizes the book's psychological insight and narrative tension. And if I refuse? Clara's expression hardened. Then I use ending number 2. The implication hung in the air between them. Olivia swallowed hard. You're not a killer, Clara. How would you know? You've spent all of 3 hours with me, most of which you were unconscious for. You don't know what I'm capable of. The terrifying thing was, she was right. Olivia didn't know this woman at all, beyond the desperation that radiated from her like heat. I'll need to sleep, Olivia said, if you want me coherent on camera tomorrow. Clara nodded. Of course, I've prepared the spare room. She held up the knife. But I'll be keeping this close, and the cottage has been secured. Don't get any ideas about leaving before our filming session. She gestured towards a narrow staircase. After you. The spare room was small but comfortable, with a single bed and a small window that, Olivia quickly discovered, had been nailed shut. A white nightgown lay folded on the bed. Seriously? Clara shrugged. I thought you might want something to sleep in. Your clothes will wrinkle if you sleep in them. My clothes are the least of my concerns right now. Suit yourself. Clara stepped back into the hallway. Bathroom's across the hall if you need it. I'll be downstairs. Don't make me come up here. The door closed, and Olivia heard a key turn in the lock. Alone at last, she sank onto the bed, mind racing. The window was secured. The door was locked. Her phone was presumably still downstairs with Clara. No immediate means of escape presented itself. She lay back on the bed, staring at the ceiling. The rational part of her brain told her to play along, to survive this bizarre scenario and deal with the aftermath later. The stubborn part, the part that had built her brand on unflinching honesty, rebelled at the thought of giving in to coercion. Outside, darkness fell. Olivia listened to the sounds of the cottage, old pipes groaning, floorboards creaking as Clara moved about downstairs, the distant hooting of an owl. Eventually, exhaustion overtook her, and she fell into a fitful sleep, still fully clothed. Morning arrived with the sound of the key turning in the lock. Olivia sat up, disoriented after a night of stress dreams and half-formed escape plans. Clara entered carrying a tray with toast, jam, and coffee. Breakfast, she said, setting it on a small table by the window. I thought we'd film after you've eaten. The light is better in the morning. Olivia eyed the coffee. Is this drugged too? Of course not. I need you alert for the filming. Clara's tone was almost chipper, as if they were colleagues preparing for a normal workday. There's a brush on the dresser if you want to fix your hair. Olivia ran a hand through her tangled bob. You expect me to care about how I look for a forced review? I expect you to care about how you look on your channel. Your appearance is part of your brand, isn't it? The sleek hair, the red lipstick, the black clothing. Visual shorthand for, I don't suffer fools gladly. It was unnerving how well Clara had passed her image-building choices. Olivia reached for the coffee, deciding the caffeine was worth the risk. It was strong and sweet, exactly how she took it. Another detail Clara had researched, no doubt. There are clothes in the dresser. Nothing fancy, but clean and approximately your size. You've thought of everything. I try to be thorough. Clara moved towards the door. 20 minutes, then we film. I've set everything up downstairs. When she was gone, Olivia ate methodically, mind still searching for options. The food gave her strength, at least. She examined the window again. Definitely secured. The room contained nothing that could serve as a weapon. Even the breakfast tray was plastic. In the dresser, she found jeans and a black sweater that looked unsettlingly similar to something she might have chosen herself. She changed quickly, used the bathroom across the hall, and tried to make herself presentable with the minimal tools available. Downstairs, Clara had transformed the living room into a makeshift studio. Ring lights, a professional-looking camera on a tripod, and a backdrop of bookshelves that could have been from any booktuber's setup. Very professional? I watch a lot of YouTube, Clara said, adjusting a light. Sit here, please. She indicated a chair positioned before the camera. On a small table beside it lay Clara's manuscript, a cup of water, and a sheet of paper. What's that? Olivia asked, nodding at the paper. Talking points for your review. Nothing you wouldn't say normally, just framed positively. Olivia scanned the page. It was a script. Praise for the taut psychological suspense, the layered meta-narrative, the unflinching examination of literary power dynamics. None of it was technically untrue. The portions of the manuscript she'd read had been well crafted, but the context made the words stick in her throat. "I can't do this," she said, looking up at Clara. "Not like this." Clara's expression hardened. "You can, and you will." She reached into her pocket and produced not the small paring knife from yesterday, but a larger, more threatening kitchen knife. "I've invested too much in this moment, Olivia. Everything I have. A forced review won't help your book. My audience knows my style. They'll see through it immediately." "Will they? Or will they just see another enthusiastic recommendation from their trusted literary guide?" Clara positioned herself behind the camera. "You'd be surprised what people will believe when it comes from a trusted source." Olivia stared at the script, mind racing. Clara was right about one thing. Her audience trusted her judgment, her honesty, her authenticity. That trust was her currency, and Clara was asking her to counterfeit it. "Before we start," Olivia said, "I'd like to finish reading the manuscript. If I'm going to review it, I should know how it ends." Clara narrowed her eyes. "You're stalling." "I'm being professional. You want an authentic review? Let me finish the book." Clara hesitated, then nodded. "Fine. But we film today, no matter what." She handed over the manuscript, and Olivia resumed reading where she'd left off. As she progressed deeper into the story, she found herself genuinely engaged despite the circumstances. The narrative took unexpected turns, delving into both Margot and the critic's psychologies, exploring the parasitic relationship between creators and evaluators. In Chapter 15, the fictional critic discovered Margot's journal, a detailed account of her planning, her motivations, and most disturbingly, her post-kidnapping plans. Olivia looked up from the page. "In your book, Margot never intended to let the critic go." Clara's expression remained neutral. "It's fiction, Olivia." "Is it? Because so far, everything in this book has been a blueprint for what you're doing right now." Clara said nothing, which was answer enough. Olivia returned to the manuscript, her pulse quickening. In Chapter 16, the critic managed to turn the tables on Margot by appealing to her writerly vanity, claiming to have spotted a critical flaw in the manuscript that would doom it to failure, if not fixed. When Margot leaned in to see the supposed flaw, the critic struck her with the manuscript itself, a heavy, bound draft that made an effective weapon. Olivia felt a chill run through her. The parallel was obvious. Clara had given her the weapon herself, a blueprint for escape hidden within the very pages meant to justify her captivity. She continued reading, more deliberately now, aware of Clara watching her. The book's climax involved a chase through woodland surrounding the cottage, the critic eventually reaching a road where a passing motorist helped her. "It's good," Olivia said finally, closing the manuscript. "You're talented, Clara. This could have found an audience without all this. You don't know that. You don't know how many query letters I sent, how many form rejections I received, how many times I was told, 'This isn't quite right for our list,' or 'We don't have the right editor for this project.' Publishing is brutal, but this, kidnapping, coercion, it won't give you what you want. It already has." Clara gestured to the camera setup. "In an hour, you'll post a glowing review to your channel. Within days, Buried Leads will be the most talked-about thriller of the year, the mysterious author who captured the attention of Olivia Brooks herself." "And then what? You let me go and I tell everyone what happened? Call the police?" Clara's expression shifted, something cold and calculated replacing the literary desperation. That's where the two endings come in. In one, you become so captivated by the manuscript that you agree to be part of its story, a willing participant in its marketing. In the other, Olivia felt her mouth go dry. I noticed something interesting about your manuscript, a minor issue, but it could undermine the entire premise if it's not addressed. Clara frowned. What issue? I've been through it dozens of times. It's subtle, but crucial, Olivia said, opening the manuscript to the final chapters. Here, in the climactic confrontation, the power dynamic shifts, but I'm not sure the groundwork is properly laid. It feels convenient rather than earned. Show me, she said, moving closer. Olivia flipped through the pages slowly. It's in this section, where Margot explains her endgame. The logic doesn't quite track with her earlier statements about wanting recognition. Clara leaned in, focused on the page. The knife in her hand lowered slightly as she squinted at the text. Olivia gripped the manuscript with both hands and swung it upward with all her strength, connecting with Clara's chin. Clara stumbled backward, the knife clattering to the floor. Olivia lunged for it, fingers closing around the handle as Clara recovered her balance. You bitch! Clara spat, blood trickling from her split lip. After everything I've shared with you. You kidnapped me, Olivia said, backing towards the door, knife extended. Drugged me, threatened me. That tends to limit my sympathy. Clara's eyes darted around the room. You don't understand what it's like, to pour everything into your work and have it ignored, dismissed, to be invisible. For a moment, Olivia felt a pang of genuine pity. I understand more than you think, but this isn't the way, Clara. She reached behind her for the door handle, keeping the knife pointed at Clara. The door swung open, and Olivia backed onto the gravel driveway, the morning sun momentarily blinding her. Clara stood in the doorway, her expression shifting from rage to something like resignation. You won't make it far. The nearest house is 3 miles away. Olivia glanced at her car, but Clara held up a set of keys. Looking for these? Without another word, Olivia turned and ran, not towards the road, but into the dense woodland that surrounded the cottage. Behind her, she heard Clara's footsteps on the gravel, then on the softer earth of the forest floor. The woods were thicker than they had appeared from the cottage, branches scratching at Olivia's face as she pushed through the undergrowth. She still clutched the knife, though the thought of actually using it on another person made her stomach turn. Olivia! Clara's voice echoed through the trees. Be reasonable. We can still make this work. Olivia kept running, her breath coming in ragged gasps. The ground sloped upward, then down again. She had no idea which direction she was heading, only that it was away from Clara. After what felt like hours but was probably only minutes, Olivia broke through the tree line and found herself on a narrow country lane. She paused, gasping for breath, listening for sounds of pursuit. In the distance, a car approached. Olivia waved frantically, stepping into the road. The car, an old Volvo, slowed, then stopped. An elderly man rolled down the window, eyeing her with concern. Are you all right, miss? Olivia realised what she must look like. Wild-eyed, leaves in her hair, brandishing a kitchen knife. She lowered the weapon. No, I'm not all right. I need help. A woman. She kidnapped me. She's back there. The man's expression shifted from concern to alarm. He reached for his phone. I'm calling the police. Olivia collapsed against the side of the car, relief and exhaustion hitting her. As the man spoke to emergency services, she kept her eyes on the woods, half expecting Clara to emerge at any moment. But the tree line remained still. And for the first time in 24 hours, Olivia allowed herself to believe she might actually escape this nightmare. The media storm that followed was both predictable and exhausting. Literary influencer kidnapped by desperate author made headlines internationally. Clara was arrested at her cottage, found surrounded by her meticulous planning documents and the manuscript that had served as both motivation and blueprint for her crime. In a twist that seemed too ironically perfect for reality, Buried Leads became the subject of a frenzied bidding war among publishers. Clara's literary agent, who claimed complete ignorance of her plans, eventually sold the manuscript for a six-figure sum, citing unprecedented true crime literary crossover potential. Olivia refused all interview requests. She sat in her London flat, watching the story of her kidnapping unfold across news outlets and social media without her input. Her subscriber count skyrocketed. People were morbidly fascinated by the influencer who had been held captive by an obsessed author. A year after her escape, Olivia visited Clara in prison. They sat across from each other at a metal table, separated by consequences neither had fully anticipated. "Why did you come?" Clara asked. "Closure, maybe, or material for my memoir. I haven't decided yet." Clara almost smiled. Always the content creator. "Why did you do it, Clara?" "Really, not the justifications in your book, not the desperation. The real reason." Clara was silent for a long moment. "Because you have what I wanted. Not just success, relevance, the power to be heard." She shrugged. "And maybe because, deep down, I knew the book wasn't enough on its own. It needed this," she gestured at the prison visiting room, "to become exceptional. You never expected the book to succeed on its merits alone, so you created a story around it that no one could ignore." "And it worked," Clara said, a hint of pride in her voice. "Six-figure advance, international rights, film options, everything I dreamed of." From a prison cell. "Details." Clara leaned forward. "Tell me, Olivia. Have you read it? The final version?" Olivia had. Against her better judgment, against the advice of her therapist and her lawyer, she had read the advance review copy of Buried Leads. It was, infuriatingly, brilliant. Clara's talent was undeniable. Her insights into the toxic symbiosis between creator and critic, uncomfortably accurate. "It's good, but not worth what you did." "That's for history to decide." Clara sat back. "What will you do now? Return to your channel as if nothing happened?" It was a question Olivia had been asking herself. Her platform had grown even larger in the wake of the kidnapping, her influence in the literary world more significant than ever. But something fundamental had shifted in her relationship with that power. "I'm pivoting. My channel will focus on the ethics of influence, the responsibility of platforms, the relationship between creators and their audiences." "Using my crime as your inspiration?" "Using my experience as a starting point. Your actions are one data point in a larger conversation about validation, attention, and the lengths people will go to for recognition." Clara nodded slowly. "We're still telling each other's stories, then?" "I suppose we are." As Olivia left the prison, camera crews waited outside. She ducked her head and pushed past them, ignoring shouted questions about her ordeal, about Clara, about the book that had nearly cost her life. 6 months later, Buried Leads topped the New York Times bestseller list. Olivia didn't read the reviews. She didn't need to. The end. Buried Leads emerged from my fascination with the shifting power dynamics in today's literary landscape. As traditional gatekeepers give way to digital influencers, I wanted to explore the precarious relationship between those who create and those who critique. The story examines our cultural obsession with validation, the desperate pursuit of recognition, and how the digital age has both democratized and distorted our understanding of artistic merit. Olivia and Clara represent two sides of a system simultaneously more accessible and more brutal than ever before. While writing, I found myself sympathizing with both women, the influencer wielding unexpected power, and the author driven to unthinkable extremes by creative desperation. Their struggle reflects larger questions about authenticity, influence, and the price we're willing to pay for recognition in a world where attention has become its own currency. I hope listeners find themselves questioning which character truly holds power in this relationship, and perhaps recognizing uncomfortable truths about their own relationship with validation in our increasingly public creative lives. Thanks for listening. To find out more about Jon Cronshaw and his work, visit joncronshaw.com. Buried Leads is